Hi, and welcome back to the studio. Brian Smith, thank you for joining me again.
My pleasure once again. I'm glad to be here.
Now, we have some more questions. Do you think you can answer a few more for us?
We'll give it the best shot.
Okay, so we have a question about development and some of the infrastructure needs that Wasaga Beach has. So I'm going to let you watch the clip, and then I'll give you a chance to answer.
Excellent.
Okay, here we go.
The development, I'm looking forward to future development, progress in the community, bringing more people in, which is a good thing, but what are we doing about the infrastructure support and any increase in population? That means roads, our water supply, our sewage systems, our cleaning and street processes for the winter. What else? Stores, schools, things like that. It's all fine and good to be planning for a growth, but there has to be something in place to sustain that growth. And then we hit cart before the horse kind of thing. That's basically all I have to say.
So what are your first thoughts when you hear that?
Well, it's, you know, this gentleman brings up some very good points, and he's not wrong. You've seen it in many towns and cities over the years where they grow so fast that the infrastructure doesn't keep up, and that's problematic. I guess the first thing I'll start with is the provincial government came up with legislation a few years back called Places to Grow. And what that basically means is that every community in the province is given a number, or most communities in the province are given a number of which we have to reach by 2030, 2031. Wasaga Beach's number is 27,000. So this community, whether it be past council, this council, or the next council, between now and then, have got to strive to get to that number. And I think the province, a big reason why the province has mandated this is because the province clearly understands that most communities have tax base issues. There's not enough taxes being raised in the communities to sustain the services you already have, never mind creating anything new. Mm-hmm. The great news for Wasaga Beach is that our infrastructure, our water, wastewater, for example, is very young, 35 to 40 years old. And we're at less than 50% capacity on both sides, the water and wastewater, which means we have a lot of room to grow. We can double what we have today. As a matter of fact, we now allow our friends to the south in Clearview, they actually use some of our capacity and pay for that because they don't have enough capacity. Many communities around us are faced with huge surmounting challenges on repairing their infrastructure, water, wastewater, because they're old systems. We're very fortunate here. So no concern about infrastructure from a water, wastewater issue. As we redevelop the beachfront, or we develop Main Street, and we start to intensify, which is another part of the Places to Grow, the province is saying no more are we going to have our urban sprawl, bungalow after bungalow. We have to intensify. They want to see more mid to high-rise buildings. The reason for that is they know, and we know it here in Wasaga Beach, that we need to collect more tax dollars per linear foot of road in order to sustain and to be able to move forward with what we have. And so, our infrastructure, the worst case scenario, we may have to change out a pipe here or there from an 8 or a 10 or a 12 inch to a few inches larger to handle some capacity. But that's a relatively minor change in infrastructure. We're not having to add infrastructure. Now, there are areas of town that don't have water, wastewater still, and this council has continued, along with past councils, to push those into areas that don't have it, and will continue to do so until the town is completely covered. But from a infrastructure standpoint in our roads, curbs and gutters, as you can see when we change out or widen or improve, we're always making those improvements. In the west end of town we have, and in the east, but more in the west, we have areas that are more prone to some flooding after heavy rains and in the spring thaw. And we continue to work on those areas to improve those areas with proper drainage. But it's a long-term goal, because this has been created over the lifespan of this community. I mean, back in the beginning, there's still many streets in Wasaga Beach, you don't have any ditches. Mm-hmm. It's road and it's flat. And that's problematic, and we're working towards fixing that. He speaks about making sure that we have civic infrastructure. So schools, he mentions, and you know where we're at with schools and working hard to bring a high school to Wasaga Beach. But we're also going to see very soon the first after-hours medical clinic open here for our citizens on a 2 or 3 day a week trial for a year. And I'm quite certain that very quickly we're going to see that it's going to be needed more than a few days a week, and it's going to be very successful. In the downtown plan, we're looking to bring more civic use facilities to town. Again, I've talked about this before, just being able to have a Service Canada where you can go and get your license and your health card. So from an infrastructure standpoint, Wasaga Beach is already in really great shape to be able to grow. And so I'm not too concerned about having to do much, if anything, for the growth. We are supposed to be at about 27,000 people by 2030, thereabouts. I believe we'll be probably closer to 35,000 people by that time. We've got a lot of development on the books. We've got a lot of developers coming to town weekly, speaking to our staff, saying we want to be part of this. And so we're in great shape that way, that's for sure. So it's a great question. It's a question that you can be rest assured staff at the town and council is looking at all the time to make sure that as we develop that we're doing it right, and we're doing it as quickly as we can, but more than doing it quickly, it's doing it right. Parking is another issue. People have seen the plan, and although on the artist rendering it doesn't show a lot of parking, but we know that on the beachfront, for example, between Beach Drive and Moseley, that's one floor. It's about 10 to 11 feet. So we can have underground parking there without going below the water table. Wow. As a matter of fact, if we went underground parking from Spruce Street to 6th Street, we'd probably have 3 to 4 times the parking we have today. And it wouldn't be difficult to do. We also can look at doing parking style structures above ground if need be. The lady asked in the last segment we did about the arena and parking, and be rest assured that staff are looking and working with the proper experts in the fields, in all of these fields, to make sure that when we build this, we're building the best it can be, as economically as possible, but ensuring that the infrastructures that's required for our citizens to be able to have and use a vibrant, complete community are going to be in place.
And I think development is one of those things where it can become a nuisance maybe to the everyday citizen that's trying to get around, but when stuff is done, it really improves everything around you.
You know, River Road West is a prime example of that, Cam. I mean, I can't tell you, I probably received 20, 30 calls since we started River Road West from citizens who were upset because it was a nuisance. It took me a long time waiting before traffic moved again, or the road was closed at some point, and I get that. I mean, none of us like to be inconvenienced. But I think when that's finished, I think the folks are going to really enjoy it. They're going to like it. I mean, some people won't. Some people will never like what you do. But most people will, and it will help us get back and forth from one end of town that much easier. You know, with development comes inconvenience. But it's a short-term pain for long-term gain. You know, people talk about when we start to redevelop the beachfront, you know, who's going to want to be there with the construction? Well, we'll do it phase by phase. We'll hoard off those areas that are in construction, and you'll be able to use the rest of the beach or Main Street just like you would any other time. You know, I always say this: if they can do construction and infrastructure in the city of Toronto, yeah, and people can still get around, we'll get it done in Wasaga Beach.
Well, that's a great answer, and I'd like to wish you and your family a wonderful Thanksgiving weekend, and thank you for sitting with us again.
Well, thank you so much, Cam, and the same to you and your family, and to the same to all the folks in Wasaga Beach who see this. Happy Thanksgiving. I hope you spend time with your family, and have a great Thanksgiving.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone.